Welcome to the Fight with Teddy Atlas. I'm Ken Rideout, joined as always by the great Teddy Atlas. We're still in quarantine. Teddy's still in Staten Island. I'm in Los Angeles. Today's episode is brought to you again by Teddy's audiobook. Check it out on audible.com. Atlas, From the Streets to the Ring, A Son's Struggle to Become a Man. And in keeping with our theme of revenue-free episodes, just want to give a quick shout out to a friend's company, Laird Hamilton and Gabby Reese, good friends of mine in Malibu. They have a company called Laird Superfood. I love this stuff. I mix it in my coffee every morning. Again, not a paid advertisement. Just wanted to give them a quick shout out of appreciation. I love these guys, love what they're doing. So with that, Teddy,
Gabby Reese was the great volleyball player.
That's right. She said she interviewed you once way back in the day on maybe MTV Rules, some MTV show, or yeah.
Actually, yeah, it was a video. It was an MTV video. We shot it at Gleason's gym where I was training fighters, and I actually trained her.
Yes,
for
that's
a session.
She mentioned
a day,
that,
whatever you want to call it, and it was part of the video, the MTV musical video, actually.
Yeah.
And if I recollect, I mean, it's got to be close to 30 years, right?
Yep.
Am I right?
Yep.
It's got to be 25, 30 years, somewhere in that neighborhood. And, yeah, tall girl and very nice girl. Obviously, a volleyball player, she had to be tall.
Nicest people in the world, real genuine. Teddy, let's have some fun today. I want to talk to you about some of the greatest rounds in the history of boxing, and I know you have a lot of strong opinions on this topic. So with that, let's jump into it.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I mean, this will be a nice one. People are home, they're self-quarantining, and they'll be able to, have friendly arguments at home over who they think is the best round in the history of boxing. And before I start, I want to explain this. I'm not trying to undo you because you're wearing your Boston. I didn't know you were going to be wearing Boston stuff. You're showing your pride. You're wearing your Boston stuff. But I'm not a Laker fan, and I'm not doing this in homage to you because you live in Los Angeles. I just want to make sure, not that I wouldn't. I'd pay homage to you, Ken, but I'm doing this as a tribute to the two Black Mambas that passed away recently in the last month or month and a half. Kobe Bryant, of course, the Los Angeles Lakers, and the other one that's not talked about enough, and that was Roger Mayweather, two-division world champion, and the Black Mamba in the ring.
Yep.
And a tremendous right-hand puncher, tremendous trainer. He was a trainer of Floyd Mayweather during his formidable years when he was coming up and winning world titles. And he was, as I said, a tremendous fighter, real good boxer, and really, really a good right-hand puncher. So, remembering the two Black Mambas, I figured that I saw this. You were talking about how with the quarantine going on that your wife is driving you crazy, but in a nice way, in a loving way, that she's cleaning out the basements. So my wife, I guess wives do that. She started saying, Teddy, get down here in the basement. I said, what, did you talk to Ken's wife? Said, no, we got to clean out this basement. So I'm looking through it last night. I hate doing that stuff. I'm a hoarder, I guess is the name, because I don't want to let go of nothing because everything has some sentimental value to me. I don't want to let anything go. So anyway, I'm downstairs. She's saying, throw this out. No, give me that. All right, throw this out. No, we got to keep that. Throw this. No, got to keep. Well, what are we going to throw out? I said, well, nothing right now. I said, but we could look it over and stuff. So I'm looking over stuff, and I found this. I don't remember, Ken. It's a full sweatsuit. It's the real deal.
Yeah.
This is the real Los Angeles Lakers warm-up suit. I got the pants and I got the top. And as you can see, I mean, it's where you pull it right off, you unbutton it, you take it right off. This is a real game-ready, authentic Los Angeles Lakers warm-up suit. I have no idea. I had fighters training years ago in California for different fights, and I guess we must have had some kind of situation where I know that they took us to a Laker game. I can't really put it together. I don't know if that's a sign of bad things to come, that I can't remember such things. But I found it last night downstairs in one of the closets, and I came up with the idea. I said, you know what? Let me wear this when we're doing the 5 greatest rounds in boxing, or at least my idea and thoughts of the 5 greatest rounds. Let me wear some, something that can pay tribute to a couple other greats, Roger Mayweather, as I said, and Kobe Bryant. And again, when I saw it, I said, I wonder what Ken's first thought is going to be. Oh, he's saying something to me because it's Los Angeles.
I've softened up on my stance on Los Angeles, living here now. If the Patriots aren't going to win, I'm all for the Rams. I would never in a million years root for the Lakers. You'll never forget the chant of the Boston fans chanting to Philadelphia, beat L.A. after Philadelphia knocked the Celtics out of the playoffs one year in the 80s during the Larry Bird era. That's the only thing I can remember when I think of Boston Los Angeles rivalry. It's that chant from the Boston fans encouraging the Sixers to get out there and beat LA.
Yeah, sure.
But I love LA and I like living here. But I don't like the Lakers.
Like East Coast, like the rappers used to have the thing going, right? The back and forth. East Coast, West Coast, East Coast, West Coast, So let's go into the fights, the greatest rounds of all time. Obviously subjective.
Yep.
But the ones that I picked, I don't know. I'd be surprised if others didn't have it on their list and some people might be surprised. I'm an old time guy where I love the old time fighters, the golden years, the 20s to 30s to 40s, when the sport was bigger than any other sport in the country, bigger than baseball, when, Jack Dempsey was Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth was Jack Dempsey. They were the kings back then of their sports. Everybody in the country knew who they were. And those years, the golden years of boxing, you had fighters like Henry Armstrong and Harry Greb. All these, they had 300 fights. Archie Moore, a little later on, they had 300 fights. Archie Moore had like 130 knockouts. Can you imagine? 130, not fights, knockouts. And Henry Armstrong probably had about 110. And then you go back even further. You had the great Sam Langford. Oh, my God. He fought from lightweight to heavyweight. He had 300 fights. You had these, and they all fought each other. They fought the best fight. It wasn't about building a record. It wasn't about getting on Showtime, getting on HBO, getting on, any of these, any of those telecasts or any of those networks, and you had to have a sparkling record. No, it was just about fighting the best and becoming the best and behaving like the best and proving you're the best. So it didn't matter if you fought a fight and you lost a fight, because you'd be fighting a week later against somebody and you make right up for it. It's not like today where you fight once a year, twice a year, 3 times a year. You fight 4 times a year. Oh, you're overworked. Oh, gee, I got to go talk to my union. You're making me fight 4 times? Well, go check the record of Henry Armstrong. He fought over 30 times in a year, and all 10 rounders, and sometimes more. So I think some people might be surprised when they see my first couple of best rounds ever. They're more contemporary. They're of the modern era, because I don't pick according to any preordained favoritism. I really don't. I pick according to what, and I just made a full confession that I have some special place in my heart for those old-time fighters. But I have a special place for all fighters to get in the ring and do it the right way. And I'm just picking rounds, as much as I love the old-timers, the rounds that move me the most, that shook the world the most. And some of them happen in the modern era. And I have to start that one with Mickey Ward and Arturo Gatti, number 1. And in the 9th round. I mean, you're talking about a chapter in a novel. There was a chapter in a novel. Matter of fact, the heck with a chapter. It was a whole damn book in the 9th round. There was everything that you want in a great novel. Everything. Storyline. A person having it all. He's winning. And then all of a sudden about to lose it all. On the brink. Off the brink. About to go off the cliff. About to be a disaster. About to fail. And all of a sudden, the comeback. In 1 round. The comeback. In 1 round. Oh my God. What a I don't know when they're going to make a movie on that. But it's got to be somewhere down the road where you make another boxing movie where somebody's got to do it around that fight. I mean, it was a trilogy in the end, but that was the one. And that 9th round, wow. Where, 1 minute, Gatti, who's a big puncher, and, both of them are tough guys. Both of them are there right in front of you. You don't have to look for them. We understand that. And all of a sudden, you got Ward coming back in that round and takes over, and it looks like he's going to stop Gatti. And I think I remember the great late Emanuel Stewart saying, "It's over. He's done. He's done. It's over." And it was because not just the headshots, it was because of the body shots. And that was Ward's forte, going downstairs to the body, touching you upstairs just enough, real quick, boom, and then bang, bring it downstairs like a whip because he get your arm to move just a fraction of an inch where he can sneak in the left hook underneath to the liver. And it's one thing getting hit to the head, but when you get hit in the liver, it's completely, it decomposes your thoughts. Your will. It deteriorates your will. And it's hard to breathe. It's hard. You're trying to talk to your legs. Your legs are saying, "Get the hell out of here. Don't talk to me. I don't want to talk to you. Leave me the F alone." And so here you are, and he gets hit that punch that does that. Nobody recovers. Very rare. Human beings don't recover from that. Androids, maybe. Humans, no. And so Emanuel Stewart, the great trainer, the great man in boxing, he's doing the broadcast on HBO with Larry Merchant, who was tremendous too, and a great writer in his own right, from Philadelphia. And here he goes. He gets hit that punch, and it makes Stewart, a guy who's been around, a guy who's not going to say things too soon. Because he's been around. He knows. It's someone else, that don't know boxing. Oh, yeah. Forget it. But he's more seasoned than that. So for him to say he's gone, he can't. If I remember correctly, Ken, he was saying he can't come back from this. It's over. It's over.
A stronger fighter as Ward before.
And body shot again. That's the body shot. It's the left hook to the body. Ward's money punch, and this knockdown counts.
And he is hurt.
This is it. He's not going to recover. It's not like a head punch.
He may not be able to recover.
I don't think so.
And he came back. Oh, my God. Not only, he's pummeling him. Ward is pummeling. And then all of a sudden, with about 30 seconds left in the round, all of a sudden, boom, it changes.
Body shots by Gatti. Ward nods as if to say, come on. Come on. Come on, let's fight.
It changes roles. All of a sudden now, Gatti's coming back, and he's banging him, and he's hurting him. I get tired thinking about it. I mean, when they walked back like they were two gladiators that just finished doing their business, swinging everything they had at each other, and then they're walking uphill, trudging back uphill, bleeding, leaking, just and their chests going up and down, and they're going back uphill, back to their corners. And you as a witness in this, you're watching it, and you're doing almost what they do. You can't help it. You go, like, oh, wow. Like you feel it. Like wow, did I just see that?
Yep.
Did I just witness that? Was I just a passenger in that car taking that ride that they just took me on? Wow. Wow. And in some ways, it reminds me of an experience, not as physical, but I was with Barry McGuigan when he was featherweight champ. I helped train him, prepare him in different ways. And they brought me over to flew me over to Belfast. He used to fight in Belfast Island, different parts, Dublin too, but I think it was in Belfast, and it was in King's Hall, which fit probably about, I don't know, it was an old place, and, old historic place, and McGuigan was the story because he would it was during the terrible times in Ireland where the Protestants and the Catholics were killing each other, and the government of England was there was there as a presence, and the Irish didn't want them there,
to say the least.
Yeah. And the Protestant, you had the IRA, you had all these things going on. You had young kids that were being obviously recruited into the IRA and recruited as assassins, to fight against the government, to fight against the government and the Protestants that were in with the government on that side, going along with them. And so you had this great divide, which was terrible. You see it in the world, you see it. It's terrible. Wherever you see it in the Middle East, it's horrible. You see it in Ireland, it's horrible. You see it in our country, it's horrible. You just don't want to see it. But it's there. It's there sometimes, and things have gotten better, thank God, and are not what they were. But back then, I'm going back 30 years, somewhere in that neighborhood, and I'm over there, and the one time McGuigan was smart. He was Irish Catholic, but he was married to a Protestant, and it was a great story. And he used to, instead of wearing just the Irish colors, or anything that traditionally the Irish fighters would wear, he wore on his trunks a dove, the bird of peace, the dove, D-O-V-E. And he was for obviously representing everybody to come together, stop killing each other, and eventually for peace. And so when he would fight, it was happening. When he would fight in Ireland on his way up, everybody would come together, and there was a truce where they would basically agree not to kill each other on that day. That people like Jerry Adams, if I remember correctly, he was one of the head guys in IRA.
That's right.
If he showed up normally outside, he'd get shot in the head, or be somebody looking to shoot him in the head. So he couldn't just come out. And he could be there, and the other people on the other side could be there, and everybody could be in the arena for that day. Gloves off, hands off for that day. So just, I'm giving this build-up so people understand how serious it was. So I'm over there with McGuigan, and, as... I'm going to be in his corner with him. He had a trainer, but I helped advise him. I helped, work out certain strategies with him for when he fought Pedroza to win the title. Actually, in London, I made a videotape, and I sent the videotape to him of strategy and what to do for the training. And so they would bring me over, for certain fights. So I'm over there for this fight, and like I said, it's at King's Hall, and I think it fit about. I'm just gonna take a shot, but it's an old place, 100 years old, whatever, and it fits maybe 10,000, but there's probably maybe it was even less, but whatever it was, there was probably 10,000 more people.
Yeah.
Than was seats for. So if it fit 10,000, it was 20,000 in there or 15,000 in there. You know, standing room. You literally, if you had a seat, somebody would be standing where your feet normally are. I mean, that's how they crammed them in. And so you got all these people in there. I remember we got there early. I was with Mickey Duff. And Mickey Duff, one of the greatest promoters of all time. And Barney Eastwood, who recently passed away, was his promoter over there. Mickey was involved with him, but Barney Eastwood, Barney Eastwood was the biggest bookmaker in Norton Island. So, you know, he had a lot of connections. He had a lot of juice. And
By the way, your guess was pretty accurate. 7,000 seats for a theater seating.
And they had at least 15,000 in the place.
Yeah.
And so Eastwood bookmaking was legal in Ireland, so he was a big, powerful guy. And so he's the promoter, the manager. Mickey Duff's involved. And I remember we get there early, and there's got to be 10,000 people outside that are just singing songs, kind of like a soccer. You know, Europe's different, like a soccer game. They're singing songs, you know. And then you get inside, and it's cavernous. It's cold. It's island. It's cold. I said it's a little chilly. Mickey Duff was the greatest, the wittiest. Oh, he was the wittiest. He looked at me, he goes, not much plumbing and centralized heating in Ireland. You're in Ireland, Teddy. You're in Ireland. It's gonna be a little chilly. You're not in Fort Lauderdale. You're in Ireland. You're not in Miami. So I said, yeah, Mick, I get it. So you're in there, and you're in this cavernous place, in this old place, and it's damp, it's cold, and we're in the dressing room, and you can hear the people starting to come in, and they're singing songs. Here we go, Barry. Here we go. Here we go, Barry. Here we go. And it's just echoing through this place. And it literally gives you like chills up your spine, and you're hearing it. And I remember Mickey looking at me, watching for my reaction, and he said, "What do you think?" I said, "Wow, it's pretty intense. You know, you don't normally go to a fight and you hear these songs, and here we go, Barry. Here we go, bap." And Mickey, being the witty guy with the humor that he had, he looks at me and he says, "Yeah, Teddy, the Irish they're a little short on lyrics, but they're heavy on passion." I always remember that one. Little short on lyrics, but big on passion. And then the place starts to fill up. And here's the point. Now it's packed. And it's like you said, 7,500 capacity. There's 15,000 in there maybe, and maybe another 20,000 outside. And you gets time to leave the locker room, and you start your march towards the ring. You can't walk. There's almost 10,000 too many people in there. So what they do is they have the British guard, the British guard. Just imagine this now with everything I just described, with what's going on in society, what's going on in the country. You got the British guard in there with their rifles, and they make a blanket, like where they put their rifles up in the air like this, and they cross them, and they stand on one side, and they put their rifles together to make like a tunnel to the ring. And as we're walking through, people are reaching their hands in between the rifles to touch us, to try to touch us, to touch McGuigan. Can you imagine?
It's crazy.
And then you finally get to the ring, and it takes probably 20 minutes. 20 minutes just to get there, to navigate your way there. And you finally get in the ring. And you get in there, and the tension and you can feel it. You know those sayings, you could feel it in there? You really could. And you get in there, and then what? What happens then? Pat McGuigan, his father, is a well-known pub singer, a saloon singer. And it's Barry's father, so he's well-known there. And he gets in there, and he sings Danny Boy, one of the most traditional, touching Irish songs that they have. Oh, Danny Boy. Can you imagine? And he sings, and you look around, you see all these hardened people, these rough, tough people that normally they couldn't be in the same room together without killing each other. They're all standing there, tears coming down their face.
The summer's gone, and all the flowers are dying.
Oh, and then when he finishes, I look at Mickey. Mickey looks at me, and he says, "What do you think?" I said, "Oh, how do you fight now?" See, how do you fight after that? But fighters do what they have to do. They're special. Just like a football player, basketball player, a doctor, a top lawyer that might get involved in an emotional thing in the courtroom, or a doctor involved in an emotional thing where they open up the patient. The patient's a 3-year-old kid bleeding internally. And you want to cry. You want to start praying. But what do? You behave like a doctor. You behave like a professional. Same thing. What does the fighter do? You want to cry. You want to just say, no more, that's enough. Not today. Not today. What do? You go and you do it. You do what you got to do. You do what you're trained to do. You behave like a pro. You behave like a fighter. And you go and you fight. Wow. Just incredible. And I just thought it was worth saying that to people that these kind of experiences were out there in this world with boxing. And I'll tell you, that fight was the closest thing to that feeling. Watching that fight reminded me of that feeling I had in King's Hall. It was that thick. It was that intense. It was that heavy. And so that's my number one round. My number two round.
Hold on, before you go on, can I just add one thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Having worked for years with Mickey at the prison, we were both correction officers at in Billerica, just outside of Lowell. I
was going to say, before you said your correction officers, I was going to say, what side of the pipes were you on?
It's funny because this is actually a true story. While Mickey and I both had badges on, both of our brothers were inmates at different times in that same facility. But I tuned in to watch that fight, and I didn't even know it was happening. I just happened to turn on. Mickey was like, for all intents and purposes, a club fighter. And when I saw him fighting Arturo Gatti on HBO, you know the feeling when you see someone who you're close with, who you identify with. It's just like the Irish people with McGuigan. Like, to me, Mickey was like, I was part of him, like he was like one of us. And I was like, oh man, Mickey Wood's in there with Arturo Gatti. Oh, he's in there tough. I hope he doesn't get hurt. Literally, I think, they must have brought him in as an opponent. And when he had us that 9th round, when he had Arturo Gatti hurt, just what you're describing, like the emotions were so deep and so strong versus what you would typically experience. I was just like, oh my God, literally in my head, I'm thinking, we're going to do it. Like I'm in there with them, as crazy as it sounds. And anytime someone's like, we won the Super Bowl, I'm always like, what position were you playing? What do you mean we won?
But now you understand.
That's the great thing about sports, is it just like for however long, whatever your connection is, whatever sport, whatever team, for that moment, you're there with them. And I'll never forget that feeling of watching Mickey Wood and feeling like we were doing it, like we were all doing it, like all the club fighters and guys who were like scrapping, they were getting a win on HBO. It was awesome. Anyway, sorry.
You know what you just did? No, it's nothing to be sorry about. You just really, in a really eloquent way, you described the essence of what a fan is. You couldn't describe it better. And why sports are so big in this country, and how people get so attached, and why they get so attached to their teams and to their players, and why it becomes so important. Why a kid's game, baseball, whatever. Obviously, boxing is not a kid's game, but why a sport that you can point to a lot of things in this world that are more important. Why a sport becomes that important to somebody. Because it can, whether it's baseball, football, basketball, hockey, boxing, it can pull somebody out of a place that they're in. It can give them hope. Their guy is doing it. Everything will be okay. Their guy. You go back in the history of this great sport of boxing, back to an unfortunate time in this country when blacks were not treated right. And Joe Louis was the heavyweight champ, he was the biggest guy in the world. Boxing was the biggest sport at that time in the world, bigger than baseball. And you had black people that were suffering. And we've gotten past that. We've that's the greatness of our country. We've been on the floor, but we've gotten off the floor. We dusted ourselves off, and we corrected our mistakes, and we went forward. We've become better and better and better and better, and we're the greatest country in the world. But you go through trials and tribulations. You go through mistakes. You go through difficulties, and that was a huge beyond difficulty. We're talking about blood, human lives. And while this was still going on in this great country, and it wasn't as great as it was about to become, but it was part of the progression, part of the transformation, part of the growth that we had to grow. Joe Louis, a black man, was the king of sports. Again, sports. What? Sports. There's more important things like paying your bills, like going to work every day, like, God forbid, being sick and illness and wars and all that. But during that time, the sport of boxing, Joe Louis being the king, Joe Louis being the champion of the world, allowed people that were down, that were losing the most important thing that you have to never lose in your life. You can lose blood, you could still live. You can lose sweat, and you still can stand up, and you still can be revived. You can lose air, and you can get new air. And you can still be able to go out there and take deep breaths. But you can't lose hope. You can't lose hope. That's the one thing you can't lose and still live. You can't lose hope. And Joe Louis was their hope.
Yep.
Joe Louis... the great stories where black families, as bad as things were, would say, we're going to be okay. Joe Louis is heavyweight champ of the world. If Joe can do it, we can do it. If Joe can win, we can win. That's how powerful. That's what you just described. That's what people sometimes don't get about sports, that it can become that at special times. Whatever it is, it doesn't have to be as serious as what I'm talking about.
Yep.
It could be much less serious, but it's serious for that person. That person feeling a little down, and their guy gets up there in the ninth inning in the World Series and wins the World Series. They've been lifted. They've been validated, their struggles. Everything's better. And that's what it can do sometimes. And with boxing, that's what it did during that time with the great. To me, he's my number one heavyweight. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the reason. Someday we'll do a podcast just on that, but that's one of my reasons, besides how great he was in the ring, and he was the greatest finisher maybe of all time, and he could punch from either side of the plate, left or right, and his punches were short and succinct, and you didn't see them coming. They went this far and they knocked you out. But besides that, and he was balanced. He was always in position, never out of position. His legs always under him, and he had Blackburn, the great fighter himself, a great black fighter that never got a chance to fight for the title, never got a chance to do what Joe Louis did, but he was a great fighter and a great trainer. Blackburn, Charlie Blackburn. I believe his first name was Charlie, but Blackburn, great fighter, tough guy, and he was his trainer. And again, it was a time where Joe Louis could lift people. He lifted people off the canvas with his punches, but he could lift people off the canvas of life by being who he was, by achieving what he achieved, by giving people, again, something that you can't afford to lose, hope. If Joe Louis could do it, we could do it. Son, if Joe Louis could do it, you could do it. There was something to point to. So, since you brought up that part, I just wanted to... The next one, number 2, again, staying in the modern era, and I can't see how you could argue with me with this one either. Corrales Castillo, number 1, the 10th round.
Yep.
Same thing. Unbelievable. Ward and Gaddy. You know, Ward and Gaddy, if that was a book, well, this was the audio version. I mean, unbelievable, Ken. Unbelievable. Castillo winning the fight, looks like he's going to knock out Corrales. He's got him gone. You know, I mean, it was like watching a guy in a angry sea getting hit by waves, crashed into rocks, one wave after another, bang, 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 you know? And then Corrales goes down, he spits his mouthpiece out, he lets his mouthpiece go out. That was the element. That was the X factor.
Yep.
That changed things. That split second of getting a little bit of a reprieve. Just a split second.
What a dramatic moment here in round 10 as Corrales hits the canvas. Castillo looking to finish it here. He goes down again. Takes the mouthpiece out.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Come here. You all right? I'm going to penalize you, taking 1 point off. Time. 1 point off here. 1 point off. 1 point.
Excessive spitting out of the mouthpiece.
Things happen for funny reasons. Fate, destiny. It's out of your control. But they happen. It happened. He spit his mouth. He let it go. Whatever. But it changed things. Just like when Muhammad Ali, the great Ali, on his way up was fighting Henry Cooper. And he got dropped by a left hook. First time in his career he was dropped. He was drunk, walking. And a young Ali goes back to his corner. He's got 1 minute to recover. It was just before the bell. He was lucky. But the great ones are lucky that way. Fate looks out for them. He gets just before the bell. He gets dropped. He goes back. He's got a minute. Is he going to recover? We don't know. But what happens? All of a sudden, he's definitely going to recover. All of a sudden, there's a rip in his glove. And the great cornerman, and one of the greatest cornermen, Angelo Dundee, says, hey, there's a rip in the glove. We got to change gloves. That takes 5 minutes. 5 minutes is better than 1 minute. Maybe it took 7 minutes. 7 minutes is better than 1 minute. By the time the gloves were changed, guess what? Ali wasn't drunk no more. The effects of the Henry Cooper left hook, they were gone. And Ali goes out there, cuts up old Henry, and obviously stops him on cuts and wins the fight. Well, those things happen with the great ones. It seems to happen at moments with special guys and special times. And the mouthpiece goes out. Corrales is about to be knocked out. He gets a little bit of a reprieve, right? A little bit of a pit stop. And then all of a sudden, he's coming back. I mean, he's gone. And now he's coming back. And he's getting pummeled. Boom! He catches Castillo.
He spit the mouthpiece out, then he took it out the second time, and it was so blatant that they actually took a point. Tony Weeks took a point from him, which took more time to get, gave him more time.
Yeah, that helped him.
Yeah,
that helped him more. He didn't care about points because at that point it was about surviving. Yes. It was about getting a reprieve.
Yep,
getting the cobwebs out of your head, and so what happens? He comes back, And now he catches Castillo. Oh, boy, what a round. What a round. Oh, my God, what a round.
Right-hander at least pushed him back. That was astonishing, and he hurts him with a hook.
Corrales comes back, a straight right. Now Castillo against the ropes. Unbelievable. Ebb and flow. They're all standing here at Mandalay Bay. Corrales coming back after being on the canvas twice here in the 10th. Now Castillo steps back. Corrales winging. Castillo's in trouble. Weak steps in, and the fight is over.
I'll tell you, I talked about it was like watching an angry storm, where the waves are just beating each other up, crashing into each other. When it was all over with, it was like the Poseidon adventure. It was like all of a sudden you're watching this battle of waves, and then all of a sudden, boom, one guy's not there no more.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
Where'd he go? Where'd he go? The wave took him. The wave took him? Yeah, the wave took him, Teddy. Wow, the wave took him. Yeah, it took him. I never thought it would take him. So that's number 2. And number 3, maybe the greatest round in heavyweight history. Maybe, for me. And the one that people don't talk about, not aware of enough, they don't talk. And it was when the 15 rounds was still 15, when fights were still 15 rounds, championship fights before it changed to 12. So you'll never see it again, obviously. So the 15th round heavyweight title fight, Larry Holmes, Ken Norton. The 15th round. Fights up for grabs.
On the line, and millions of dollars to boot. Here we go. Both fighters need a big round. The 15th round of the World Heavyweight title is on the line right now. Very important for both men to win round 15.
And this 15th round is going to do more than get a hand raised. It's going to be doing more than designate the heavyweight champ of the world. I don't think there's ever been a round, Ken, maybe, that's been more significant in changing the course of two people's lives in a sport, in any sport, than this. It changed the course of two men's life in a dramatic way, where it's this much. I mean, not even that much to pick in that round. And Larry Holmes wins the round. Whoever wins is going to win the fight. He wins the round, and he goes on to make 20 title defenses. The only man who made more heavyweight title defenses was the man I just talked about before, the great Joe Louis, 25. Holmes goes on to make 20 title Guess what? When you make 20 title defenses, guess what happens? Your bank account grows quite large, and you wind up buying a town called Eastern Pennsylvania. Basically. He basically owns Eastern Pennsylvania, hotels, banks, whatever. That's what happens. And that's glorious. That's great. I love to say it. But then what happens when a guy that doesn't quite that close and just gets beat out by maybe one punch, maybe one punch, what happens to him? He becomes a footnote, basically. Ken Norton, I love Ken Norton. Great. But he becomes a footnote in the history of the sport. The other guy goes on to be a multi-millionaire that basically owns a town and is thought of, came this close to beating Marciano or tying Marciano's record before Michael Spinks beat him, because he was 48-0, he was going for 49-0, and Spinks beat him. And then that doesn't happen, So, but he's that significant. He goes on to have that kind of life, and Ken Norton becomes a footnote basically to the guy who fought Muhammad Ali 3 times, lost twice, and broke his jaw once. But that doesn't pay bills. That doesn't put you in the history books. It puts you in the books. But it doesn't put you in the books with that kind of legacy that you want to be attached to in the books. It doesn't do that. It doesn't give you immortality. That's just a reminder of how fickle life can be, how fragile, how the scales can go this way. Just the smallest thing in life could tilt the scale one way or the other way for somebody. And it did in that fight. And what a round. What a round. People should Google these rounds. They've probably seen the first two, but they probably haven't seen the one I just said. And then number 4, if you've been in Irish pubs where you go into those men type bars, the real men type bars, those Irish pubs and stuff. There's not as many as there used to be, but you see a picture. And listen, I hope you go. I don't know. You used to go with them, but now you're a big shot. You go into those fancy places that have the umbrellas and the drinks. Right. No Guinness. Right, and a shot on the side. Right, what they call that? A Boilermaker.
With my 4 little kids, I'm happy if I can have a glass of wine in my backyard and no one come over and punch my face.
No, you're right. You're right. You have a beautiful family. And so any of those bars that you go in, the people listen to me, if you don't know what I'm talking about, ask your father. Ask your grandfather. Ask your uncle. Ask your neighbor. Somebody does. There's a picture of this fight right there above the bar. An old picture of this fight. Old painting of this fight. And which fight? Dempsey versus Firpo. Back when boxing was the king. And Dempsey was the king. Firpo was down 5 times, and the round was the first round. 5 times, and Dempsey's down twice, Ken, in the first round. And Dempsey's knocked out of the ring. He's knocked out of the ring. He falls into the scorer's table where the judges like their scorecards get thrown onto the floor because Dempsey falls onto their table. And there's a picture of Dempsey outside the ring with Firpo standing over him and Dempsey outside the ring, his body outside the ring, starting to climb back in. Imagine. So what a round.
If you get knocked out of the ring, what do you have, 30 seconds to get back into the ring?
Back in those days, we're talking the 1920s, so I don't know exactly what the rules were then. But nowadays, what do you have, 20 seconds, I think?
I think it's 20 or 30 seconds to get back in.
And we had situations like that. Bernard Hopkins, when he was middleweight champ, right?
I think that was the last of his fight by Joe Smith Jr. Knocked him out. He went right out. I think he landed on his head.
I think Hopkins went through that more than once. You'd have to check for me, Ken or Rob. I think Hopkins, who of course has more middleweight defenses than anybody, even more than Hagler, or I forget who else, Tony Zale, whoever, but he broke the record for most title defenses middleweight, and Hopkins was terrific. I think he was knocked out of the ring twice. I think there was another time in his career, earlier in his career, when he fought Smith, he was old. Yeah. Let's be honest. Take nothing away from Smith. What a physical guy. What a tough guy. What a determined guy. But, he was in there with what was Hopkins? Close to 50 years old?
Yeah.
I mean, but a younger Hopkins when he was, reigning as middleweight champ, you guys are going to have to look it up. But he got knocked out of the ring, if I remember correctly, and got back in the ring. Or the fight might have been a no contest because of an injury. I can't remember what it was. You'll find it. Rob will find it. Somebody will find it. But that that was a great round. If there's pictures of it in all the Irish pubs around the country, It had to be. That's number 4. You ready for number 5?
Ready.
You remember the old westerns?
Yep.
The gunslingers?
Yep.
You know, that was Clint Eastwood with that music. Can you do that music for me? I know Rob's going to put it up for me. He'll put it up for me. I know he will. But that music... Yeah, there it is. No, not quite. That's a little off. Little too Bostonian. I'm talking about West.
I even
Come on.
whistle with a Boston accent.
You do. Get the car. All right. So you got to have that image when I take you down this alley where you got these 2 gunslingers coming out to music, Clint Eastwood coming out, and the OK Corral. You're going to have a shootout. You're just going to have a shootout. Nothing fancy. Once it starts, bullets are flying. And that's what this one was. Number 5, baby. Hagler Hearns.
Oh, the best.
Hagler Hearns. Round number 1. Wow. Round number 1. I mean, what can you say that I haven't said and just given that description? It was one of the greatest rounds, again, in boxing history. And I can't stop at 5. You knew this was coming. How are you going to stop at 5? It's like eating those. Should I name the name and give them free advertisement when they don't promote us? But maybe they become a sponsor. It's like eating those Lay's potato chips. You can't have one. You can't have one. You're talking about greatest rounds, Ken. Greatest rounds in the history of this sport. How are you going to stop at 5? Ken. You can't stop at 5, Ken.
Especially when 2 of the 5 were Bostonians, Hagler and Mickey Ward.
Yeah.
We don't want to get too skewed towards the Bostonians.
It's like that movie where, what's his name is the star, Tom Hanks, and League of Their Own. When the girl in the baseball game starts crying, he comes out of the dugout. What are you doing?
Yeah.
There's no crying in baseball. There is no crying in baseball. You can't cry in baseball. And then the umpire comes down. What are you doing? What's going on here? She's crying. You tell us she can't cry. There's no crying in baseball. Well, there's no picking 5 rounds when you ask Teddy Atlas to pick 5 of the greatest rounds in the history of the sport, a sport that's around longer than any other sport in the freaking world. You could trace it back in some origins to 200 years. There's no way you're asking me to stop at 5, okay? So I'm not. So I'm gonna go through some others, and these others, I don't know the round. I just know that in the fight, was one of those rounds was the round. I just can't identify for you which one it was. And it was Graziano Zale 2. Graziano, Brooklyn kid, New York kid. Remember that old show? Do you remember, Kenny, the East Side Kids, the Bowery Boys?
I don't remember that one.
Flip. Oh, man, I remember those guys. Slip and Flip. They were rugged kids out on the street. They were wayward kids, but there was something special about them.
Yeah.
Something really good about them that something redeeming. Yeah, but they were kids. They were getting in trouble, doing all kinds. They didn't have any real direction. And Graziano was that kid. He was in reform school along with Jake LaMotta. He was from the Lower East Side, I believe. And matter of fact, they were both in reform school, I think, at the same time. And you know about prisons up where I was in a prison called Kosaki as kids.
Oh, yeah.
It was about 10 miles from where I lived in Catskill when I was training fighters up there for 8 years with Customato. Kosaki prison. I don't know if it's there anymore, but they were both in there. So it's a great story. So here, Graziano, this kid from the Lower East Side. He fights for the title against Zell, the Man of Steel, the great Tony Zell, great body puncher. Oh, he had a great combination. You know what his signature punch was? Right hand to the body, bang, left hook. Right hand to the body, bang, left hook to the head. Freeze you, paralyze you with the right to the body, and then knock you out with the left hook to the head. So he fights Graziano. Graziano gets knocked out by him in the first fight. Then he fights him. He fights him in a rematch. I believe it was in Chicago, if my memory is right, outdoors. But you'll find it. So he fights him in a rematch, fight number 2. And of course he's a big underdog, Graziano. But the one thing Graziano, besides that he fought with great heart in that fight, he had a great right hand. Kind of like Wilder. We talk about Wilder's right hand, paralyzing punch. He had that kind of power in the right hand. He had that's what he was. He was a right hand guy, right hand puncher. And did you find where the fight was?
I'm working on it.
One was in New York, one was in Chicago. I think the second one was Chicago.
These guys, when you look at their record, they had so many damn fights. It's like pulling teeth trying to fight it. I see him fight in 48. He fought him in Newark. Tony Zale in 47. He fought him in Chicago for the NBA middleweight title. National Boxing Association.
That was the title. There was one champion. It was like it should be. There was one champion in each division. Not 5, not 10, not 22. One champion.
Zale's record fighting for the title was 63-16.
Yeah, not bad. And so the Man of Steel. So they fight the rematch in Chicago, and Graziano's a big underdog. He's on the floor in the fight. He's behind, way behind in the fight. And I don't know, it was the 5th round, 6th round.
6.
He catches Zale, 6th round. He catches Zale with that thunderbolt like Wilder has, that right hand. Tremendous puncher. And he knocks him out and he becomes the middleweight champ of the world. Oh, wow. What a story. What a story. This kid from the Lower East Side, this kid that was in reform school, he's the middleweight champ of the world. And to show you how big that fight was, remember the actor, the great Paul Newman?
Yep.
Well, a young Paul Newman, they make a movie out of that fight. They make a movie out of the Graziano story. They make a movie called Somebody Up There Likes Me. And Paul Newman, the young Paul Newman, great actor, he plays Graziano in the movie. It became a very popular movie. I don't know if it won any awards, but it was a feel-good movie. Really, really perfect movie for this story. And anybody who has a movie about their life, I guess you could say they made it. And they deserve to be mentioned on my list. As a matter of fact, I remember afterwards, he was one of the first fighters back in those days that got commercials. He used to do Midas muffler commercials. And he'd stand there and he had that New York broken, accent, that accent that Cus D'Amato used to get mad. He used to say, you know what gets me mad, Teddy? People, when they hear the way he talk, I would have had, he had that kind of talk, like that just street sort of uneducated, rough around the edges talk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like a tough guy talk, like, yeah, I would have had him in but the guy got away, and then I cut him with the right hand. I would have mauled him. I would have mauled him if I would have had a chance. And when he would talk that way and do the commercials, that's why he got the commercials. There was something likable, something that was sellable with that. That connected with people. So basically, he was the guy that represented Midas mufflers with the commercials. But Cus used to get mad and say, people think he talks that way because he got hit too much. But I know Graziano because Cus had Graziano before he turned pro. Cus had him. A lot of people don't know that. So Cus said, he always talked that way. He talked that way before he ever got hit a punch. That was just the way he talked. But everybody blamed it on boxing, and Cuz used to get pissed off, so, and would have to he would have to explain that to you. But he would do the gotta buy Midas commercial. All right, if you don't, I'm gonna knock you out. I'm gonna hit you with this. So he was the face of Midas mufflers. So that became number 6 in my five round list. And number 7, Ali Frazier 3. I mean, the thrill in a little. I don't remember if it was the 10th round. It was a late round, but all I know is if you have one of the greatest fighters of all time tell Sports Illustrated after the fight that after the 10th round, he felt like he was going to die.
Yeah.
Those are Ali's words. He said, I felt like I was going to die. And I went back, and he was very honest. You don't get this too often because people want to protect their images. They want to protect themselves. They don't want, especially in a boxing game. And even in the other sports, like if you're a pitcher and your arm felt like it was falling off and you struck a guy out, you don't want to tell him your arm was falling off because the next time the guy might dig in a little bit more and say, hey, I know he doesn't feel good, even though he's making me think he feels good. Or a football player where, the guy, you don't want to tell him that, hey, I didn't feel like hitting anybody no more because then you might feel that you can get the guy to that place.
Yep.
So you don't want him to know your possible weaknesses. So fighters wouldn't talk honestly about how they were human. They were human, and they felt human thoughts. So here he is where after the 10th round, he talks very honest. More honest than anybody ever had probably before. And he tells the writer from Sports Illustrated, I felt like it was the closest thing I ever felt to death. And he said, when I went back and sat on the stool in the 10th round, I thought about quitting. What? What? Muhammad Ali? What? And people never thought that a fighter of that caliber, a performer of that caliber, whether it's baseball, football, it could be anything. It could be a guy who goes out to work for his family and he feels like quitting. He just gets down. He feels it, but he doesn't quit. He doesn't quit because something else picks him up. His responsibility to his kids, whatever it is. But it doesn't mean you can't feel what a normal person would feel and such things. So you people out there, you feel that? Hey, Ali felt it. What matters is what you do, not what you feel. And Ali felt like quitting, he said. And then the bell rings, and what does he do? He picks his backside up, his wet backside that was soaking wet from all that sweat, and he gets up, and he goes out there and goes into the storm, a storm named Joe Frazier that did nothing but throw left hooks. And he went out there. And then at the end, who winds up stopping in a corner? Eddie Fudge stops it in the 14th round. I believe it was the 14th round, and stops the fight and doesn't allow Frazier to come out for the 15th. And, and meanwhile, there's another lesson in life. You feel so like you can't go on, and 4 rounds later, the other guy can't go on.
Mm-hmm.
There's another moral to that story. Don't give up. The other guy might be feeling the same thing as you're feeling in life. You don't know. You don't know. You don't know. So what a fight. And again, they were never the same. They left big pieces of themselves. They left big pieces of themselves in the ring. They really did that night. They didn't leave that ring whole. They did not. But it's a tough sport. It's a brutal sport sometimes. Yep. It was a if there's such a word or such a phrase as what I'm about to spit out of my mouth, it was a beautiful brutality.
Yep.
There was a beauty to the brutality because beyond the brutality, you saw why man is still here. From the first time that we started walking up straight instead of bent over, and we had less hair on our arms and legs, there was a understanding from the beginning, whether it was a woolly mammoth outside your cave or a saber-toothed tiger or somebody from, one of the other tribes with a club in his hand, whatever. You understood without having to say a word. Conquer or be conquered. It was emblazoned into our souls, into our DNA. That's why man's still here, baby. Conquer or be conquered.
That reminds me of that expression when you were describing that fight, that when you're going through hell, keep going.
There it is. And, that's what it was. And there was nothing left. He thought about quitting. And then the bell rang. And he got up. Conquer or be conquered. That's why I say a beautiful brutality, because it was brutal.
Yeah.
But what was beautiful was to be able to see where men can reach when they dig inside of themselves and they explore those spaces inside of themselves. It's extraordinary what they can find, where they can go. And that was extraordinary. It really was. Boy, brutal, damaging, but who's to say if you asked him again if it was worth it? Ali didn't get he didn't get to live the years that he might have lived if he didn't go through those fights. And to be debilitated physically the way he was, let's be honest, we talked the truth here, with Parkinson's, that didn't come out of the sky. It came out of fist. Fist that came out of the sky. But it didn't come on its own. But if you asked him, he was never unhappy at the end. He was never unhappy. He was always gracious. He was always part of his religious beliefs to be good to all people, with Islam and his belief of just being good to people, loving all people. And he changed. He made a metamorphosis in his life later on as a person. And he really did believe in loving all people at the end. And he practiced that. I was with him one time in a place at an event, and he wasn't in great shape, and they were trying to get him to leave. And there was a line that just kept going and going and going and going on autographs, and he would not leave till he signed the last one. He just wouldn't. He just wouldn't.
It reminds me of another boxing guy, when we were at the Hall of Fame and you were trying to go from one event to another, and there was a line of people, and Rob and I were giggling to ourselves because the guy who was organizing the whole thing was like, Teddy, we're going to have to delay the cocktail party. And your attitude to him was like, so delay it. And we're not going to leave until all the people get an autograph. There was a line of people, and it was so funny watching the organizer panic as you were like completely unfazed by his chaos and like, no, until all the autographs are signed, can't delay the cocktail party if you have to. So he must have rubbed off on you.
I don't know. I'll never be an Ali, but we can all be who we want to be. And I want to be a person that respects people, to the point that they have a right to be respected, and that cares about people. And if people can come up there and take the time to come up to the Hall of Fame and drive wherever they drove, some of them flew from London and different places, Australia.
That's a good point, because the place is in the middle of nowhere, more or less. I mean, it's up there.
And if people can come up there, they can take the time to think it's important enough to get an autograph from you, from who? What am I? And they think that that's important enough. Well, I'll be damned. I'll be damned if I'm going to let a cocktail party make me walk away when a person is there and wants an autograph and came where they came from and thinks that's important to them. And makes it that important to them. It's a privilege.
Yep.
It's not a burden.
No, you're right.
It's a privilege that somebody cares that much.
Yep.
And that you could make them, that you have to give for that moment. I might not have that gift again.
Yeah.
But for that moment, I have a gift to be able to make somebody feel a little better, to feel good.
Yep.
I don't deserve it, but I don't know how it happened, but I have that gift for that moment. For that moment, I have that gift, that privilege to be able to make somebody feel a little bit better.
Yep.
What's better than that?
Yeah, no.
What's more important than that? Nothing. So, but that fight, and then the next round, again, I can't tell you. Oh, I can tell you the round. Joe Louis versus light heavyweight champ Billy Conn. The first time that a light heavyweight was moving up to heavyweight. Well, not the first time. I shouldn't say that. But he was trying to become the first light heavyweight to win the heavyweight title. That's what he was trying to do. He was trying to become the first light heavyweight to win the heavyweight title. Billy Conn, great fighter, great light heavyweight champ, good boxer, fighting a great Joe Louis who was past his prime. And it was the 13th round. Conn was ahead on all scorecards. The only way he could lose was to get cocky and stand in front of the great Joe Louis too long. He got cocky, and he stood in front of the great Joe Louis. And Conn was a great fighter. He stood in front of the great Joe Louis a little too long and fought with him a little bit too much. Told his corner said box. He told his corner, nah. What's the fun in that? I'm knocking him out. I'm knocking the old man out. Respect your elders. Respect your elders. A lesson. And what does he do? He stands in front of him a little too much. He's way ahead on the scorecards. Louis knocks him out. 13th round. The great Joe Louis. And number 9. And you know why I'm going with this one, Ken?
Why is that?
2 reasons. One, because it belongs here, number one. We have great fans out there, and I want to take this moment to thank them. You always thank them. I want to thank them for being with us and giving us a reason to do this. And one of the fans that had written in to, and Rob looks at, Rob tries to look at all of the things that get written in, and my daughter looks at a lot of them too, my daughter Nicole, and they get written into my Instagram, they get written into, I don't even know
Twitter.
What they are, Twitter. I was going to say Twitter. I'm glad you jumped in there. And they're written into Twitter, and they're written into our show, and I don't get to see them all, but I see some, and I try to read as many as I can when they're brought to my attention, but there's so many of them. And we're blessed. I'm blessed, and I'm thankful. But there's one that I did see. The fan, he loves us. He loves the show. And we're grateful to all the fans. But he had a complaint. He loves the show, son of a gun. But he had a complaint. He said, Teddy, you talk about all these fights and all these great fights, and thank you, and I'm with you, and my family's with you, and my friends are with you. But why do you not talk about during the 80s, the great fights between Boza Edwards and Bobby Chacon and Bazooka Lamone, all those guys? Why do you not talk about them? All right, okay, I'll talk about them. Here I am. I hope you're listening. I hope you're listening, buddy. And here it is. For you. This one's for you. Bobby Chacon versus Boza Edwards. They fought a few times. But every one of the fights was just wars. Nothing but wars. And there was a fighter at that time, Bazooka Lamone. The three of them, they took turns fighting each other. And then a guy came along named Hector Camacho, who really is an underrated fighter. He really was. One of the fastest fighters. We talk about the speed of Mayweather and Pacquiao. A young Camacho might have been faster. I mean, that's how fast he was. which is pretty amazing what I just said. And he came along. He was just too fast for these guys, for Bazooka Lamone. I remember that fight. I think that's who he fought. But they fought so many times. But pick whatever round you want. I don't care. But Chacon versus Boza Edwards, just two gladiators from the 70s, the 80s. They left it all in the ring. And quite frankly, especially Chacon, he left too much in the ring. He left too much in the ring, to be quite honest. But that's another reason why I'm mentioning him. The fan that wrote in what he wrote in, he's absolutely right. He earned the right to be mentioned. And I'm doing what the fan reminded me to do. Number 10, George Foreman versus Ron Lyle. Some people called it the elevator fight because each were on the floor so many times, up and down, elevator. Again, pick your round, but it was quite a fight. They were both on the floor. Ron Lyle was a guy who began his boxing career in prison, I believe, in Colorado. He got out. He became a heavyweight contender, good puncher, and he fought the great George Foreman. George Foreman had a great chin. He needed it against Lyle because Lyle was a hell of a puncher. I think mostly with the right hand, if my memory's right. And then I'm like the energy bunny with gloves on. I'm just going to keep going, baby. Number 11. And I wrote to myself, last but not least. Guess what? It's not last. But I thought it was. My intentions were, at the moment when I was doing it, I swear to you, Ken, at the moment I was doing it, it was going to be my last one. But, then you start thinking and you say, wait a minute. And this one, just like I did the other one for the fan, and I'm not doing them if they're not legitimately belonging there. I'm not doing it. But this one is for my friend, the great Philadelphia Hall of Fame promoter, Russell Peltz. I know that this will make him happy. It was Matthew Saad Muhammad, who was a great light heavyweight champ, made great fights back in the 80s, fought everybody, Yaki Lopez, Jerry the Bull Martin, everybody. I mean, he was the epitome of what you mean when you say fan-friendly fighter. And good right-hand puncher, tough guy. Got hit too much, suffered the consequences later in his life, unfortunately. But boy, he brought a lot of good fights to people. Matthew Saad Muhammad versus Russell Peltz's fighter, Marvin Johnson. Marvin Johnson was a southpaw, tough guy. Tough guy. Muhammad won by 12th round KO. I don't remember which round exactly, but was the great round. But they were all great rounds. Again, choose whatever you want in that fight. You can't go wrong. Just can't go wrong. And I'm going to read my note here. On second thought, I better throw in one more. So number 12, and again, inspired by a friend. But it belongs there. But inspired by a friend. My friends, the fans, everybody out there, they put me back on the right road sometimes. I listen. People think I don't listen. I listen. I listen when I want to. And this one is so my friend, the great historian, I think he's probably the best historian. If not the best, he's one of the top. Like we got the top 5, which has become 12 right now, rounds of all time. My friend who I'm about to mention is probably the top historian in boxing, but definitely in the top 2 or 3. But for me, he's the best. And his name is Mike Silva. And he would be angry if I didn't get this one in. The old mongoose. He loved the fighters of the era of the golden era. And how can you not love the old mongoose, Archie Moore? 300 fights, 130-something knockouts. I mean, he had the turtle defense. He invented this. The turtle defense again like this. And, he fought. He was still winning titles or defending titles in his 40s, late 40s. He didn't get the shot at the light heavyweight title. He might have went down with. He still might be the greatest light heavyweight of all time, but there's an argument to be made. But he might have went down as the greatest light heavyweight by miles if they gave him his title shot when he deserved it. But they didn't. They didn't. It was still hard back in those days where a black fighter didn't always get a fair shake, unfortunately. And he had to wait longer. But when he got his shot, he made the most of it, and he kept the title even into his into his 40s. This is quite a fight. The old Mongoose, the great Archie Moore, he was in his 40s. You could look up the age right now, Ken, if you want. But it's a fight against a young, I think he was like 25 years old, 26 years old, Yvon Durrell from Canada. Strong, young, tough guy. He was fighting a great Archie Moore. Archie's probably about 45, 44, and probably Durrell's about 25. So you're talking about 20 years difference. And what happens? Well, again, greatest rounds. Durrell drops the great Archie Moore 3 times in the first round. There was no 3 knockdown rule, obviously, in effect. I believe it was 3 times in the first round that he drops him. And Archie Moore survives it. And he comes back. And I hope my memory is correct, but you're going to look it up for me. He comes back and he knocks out Durrell in the 11th round. I mean, can you imagine 45 or something like that, fighting a 25-year-old? He gets dropped 3 times in the first round, I believe it was, and then he comes back and knocks Durrell out in the 11th.
The 11th round in 58, he knocked him out in Montreal and Quebec, retained the lineal heavyweight title.
And he got dropped 3 times in the first round more, right?
Gotcha. Yeah, sorry.
So he gets dropped 3 times in the first round, as I said, and comes back and knocks out the younger Durrell in the 11th. So making Mike Silva happy, that's number 12. And that took me into 13. Lucky 13, right? I don't know. I'm a little superstitious, but... And this one I had to be selfish. I took it from my day doing the Friday night fights that we did for 18 years on ESPN. And we had a lot of special fights, but for me, this was one of the greatest that you could ever watch in person. And it's a fight that nobody's probably going to think twice about or even notice when I say it. But that's why I'm saying it, because it deserves to be said. It doesn't always have to be attached to famous names, significant names. It's just a great fight. And again, it was part of, I called the fight, obviously, on ESPN. And I believe I called it with my partner, Bob Popper, at the time. And it was Israel Vasquez versus Larios. What a fight. What a fight. Great fight. Great rounds. Again, I don't remember what the hell round it was, but there was a lot of them. And I'm going to read my note. Oh, forget about Lucky 13. Let's do 14. Just in case there is some superstition and there could be something attached to 13. So let's go past 13. Let's do 14. And you're going to be glad I did it, Ken. And the fans are going to be glad that I did it. And I just want to check here to see if it's the last one. Yeah, it's the last one. It's the last one. And it's Aaron Pryor versus the great Alexis Arguello. Well, let me say it again. The great Aaron Pryor, God bless him, he's not with us no more. God bless Alexis, he's not with us anymore. The great Aaron Pryor versus the great Alexis Arguello, number 1. Wow. And there were 15-round fights back there. Wow. What a fight. See if you could pull this up. I don't know. Rob will pull it up for us. But there was a round there where Arguello, stand-up boxer, champion in several divisions, gentleman of the ring, was a great right hand, straight right hand puncher. Nothing looping, straight as an arrow. And Aaron Pryor was the opposite. Threw punches from all angles. The Energizer Bunny never stopped coming. Never stopped coming. He had instincts that very few guys have. He had energy that very few guys had. He'd go to the side, give you angles, come at you from all direction. He was the closest thing ever to Henry Armstrong from the 30s. Just a punching dynamo. Just a punching windmill. Just a hurricane on legs. He never stopped. And he fought the great Alexis Arguello. Arguello was the favorite going into that fight, I think. And I remember I made a bet with a newspaper writer, and everybody liked Arguello. I liked Pryor. And I don't think they realized how special Pryor was yet. There was something inside of him. And so I liked Pryor. We bet a steak dinner at a good restaurant. I'm still waiting for the...
You said Arguello was the favorite?
Yeah.
Arguello, yeah, it was 12-5 favorite.
Yeah. And...
Tempting to become the first boxer to win world titles in 4 weight divisions.
Yep. Well, during the course of the fight, back and forth, Arguello hits, and this is the round probably, I don't remember which one it was, but Arguello hits Pryor with a right hand, one of his Sunday punches, his signature punch, straight right hand. And Pryor's head goes like this, Ken. Watch this. Goes like this. And comes back. I mean, it was like, you ever see that movie? And it's not a pretty scene, what I'm going to say right now. But you ever see that movie, The Exorcist?
Of course.
With Linda Blair?
Yeah.
The child actress?
Yeah.
And she was possessed by the devil, and the devil made her, and the priest was throwing holy water on her, and splitting her skin, and
yeah.
It was you talk about fights. That was an ugly fight, and trying to get the devil out of her, and then all of a sudden the devil does the inside of Linda Blair, the girl, does this. I can't quite do it. I'm sure there's fans out there would love to see me do it. There's a few out there that would love to see Teddy Atlas's head go all the way around and spin. They probably would. If there's not fans out there, and I love you, there's a few promoters out there. There's a few people out there. They would love to see my head. Go ahead, Ted, try it. See how far it can go. See how far it can go. But Linda Blair, the actress who was possessed, her head spun around. It just spun around. And Robert put it up. And it was the closest thing to that. I mean, it was his head. He got hit the right hand. I'll do it again. Boom. His head went like this. And then he came right back and went right after him. Wow. You talk about tough. You talk about determination, resiliency, overcoming, possessed. Mm-hmm. He was possessed. Of course, there was the little blemish in there, which I mention everything.
Yeah.
So people can never get mad. They could get mad at me because they like to get mad.
Yeah.
Right? The human beings are that way. They want their way. I get it. But you can't get mad at me where you say I take a favorite. Or I say something about one guy, I don't say it about I say it about everything if it's there to say. Whoever it is. It could be my brother, and I'll say it if it's there to be said. And the only blemish on this fight, it's not a blemish because it was a great fight, but the only thing was where Panama Lewis, the trainer in the corner, in that round wanted attention, and in that round he said, "Don't give me the other bottle, the one I mixed."
Yep.
And then, of course, people started conspiracy theories. What was in that bottle? That a guy's head could go like this, and then come back, and he could keep going. What was in that bottle? What was in that bottle?
That was between the 13th and the 14th round that he gave him that bottle.
Yeah. So, and then listen, people thought that there was something to it later on, because some years later, he did what can you say? Just a disgusting, low life, just a horrible thing. Panama Lewis removed the padding in the dressing room in Madison Square Garden of Louis Resto in a fight with Billy Collins, who at the time was like 14-0, undefeated, stepping up in the Garden. I was there. I was at the Garden that night because that was the night that Roberto Duran, after no mas and everything he went through, trying to come back to greatness, get back to close to greatness again. That was the night that he fought the Bronx-born, who I knew very well, and God bless him, he's not with us anymore, Davey Moore, I believe it was for the junior middleweight world championship. And here's the great Roberto Duran coming back with everything that he was coming back from, from the no mas and everything else. He comes back and he wins the world title in Madison Square Garden, and he beats Davey Moore. He stops Davey Moore. Wow. And I'm at the Garden. It's a full Garden. And on the cold feature of that, on the undercard, the cold feature was undefeated Billy Collins versus Louis Resto. And nobody really thought much of it. I remember being in the ring, near the ring, and I remember when the fight ended, Louis Resto won. And you couldn't see it from the crowd, but if you were watching it on TV, you could have saw it, I guess. But Collins' face was swollen up, as though he was like he got hit with a baseball bat. I mean, he was all swollen up. And, you see that sometimes, but this didn't seem like it should have been from the kind of fight, And Louis Resto was a puncher. He was a guy that never stopped punching, but he was a guy that couldn't break an egg.
Yeah.
He wasn't a puncher. Tough guy, experienced guy, really was. But and all this damage. But the one thing I remember being there in the arena, I looked up and something was going on after the fight. Like instead of going and shaking each other's hand, going to the corner waiting for the decision, something was going on. You could see something was happening that wasn't right. And sure enough, it wasn't right. And Billy Collins, what happened was Billy Collins' father was his trainer, or was in the corner with him. One of his seconds if he wasn't his trainer. And when the fight's over with, usually you take the gloves off right away. But Panama Lewis in the corner of Russell didn't take the gloves off. That must have made Billy Collins' father think. And Billy Collins told him in between rounds at one point during the fight, the father was trying to urge him on. Come on, Billy, you got to get going. What are you doing? And he said, Dad, every time I get hit, it's like I'm getting hit with the guy's knuckles. And, you're a trainer. You don't let soft thoughts, weak thoughts, debilitating thoughts, losing thoughts penetrate your fighter. As a trainer, you throw them out of the corner. You throw those thoughts out of the corner. That's your job. And so he said, come on, stop that. Just get out there, do what you got to do. But then when the fight was over and he saw the face, and he remembers what the son told him, and he sees the gloves are still on, and of course Billy Collins has his gloves off. So now they come over to, say good fight, and Billy Collins' father grabs a hold of Resto, and Resto tries to hide his gloves, like hide his hands. He grabs his hand and he shakes his hand, and he feels his glove, and there's nothing there. There's no padding. The fingers of Billy Collins' father go right to the skin and bones of Louis Resto's hand. And he starts yelling, screaming for the commission to come and confiscate the gloves. Something's wrong. Come here. And that's the havoc I saw. I saw this havoc, this chaos going on. Again, I didn't know what it was at the time, but I knew something was going on. And it turned out that, sure enough, the trainer, can't even call him a trainer. A trainer's supposed to be responsible, you know. The criminal, the guy that did this was Fatima Lewis. You know, one of the worst, most disgraceful acts you could do. I mean, there's enough risk in that ring without doing crap like that.
Yep.
It's one of the most honorable things you can do is go face another man one-on-one. Go face another man and see who the best is. You're not supposed to do something like that. You can't do that. What's the honor in that? You can't do that. Yeah, you want to win, but you want to win by the right way, by being the best, by facing what you have to face. That's what makes it special. That's what makes it a gladiator sport, that you behave like a gladiator.
Mm-hmm.
You behave like a fighter that has rules and laws in their domain. Anyway, and principle. But anyway, he took the horsehair. Back in those days, they still used horsehair gloves. And they took the horsehair of his Everlast gloves. They removed it. They made a slit in the glove and removed a lot of it. And obviously Billy Collins was never the same. And a year later, he died in a car accident, and his life had spiraled downward, and it led to that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, his career was over. Every bone in his face was broken, and his career was over. But anyway, terrible, terrible thing. But that night, Roberto Duran took a step back to being great again, you know, out of the shadows that he had been exiled to knock out Davey Moore. You know, I hope everybody enjoyed these rounds, because I feel like I just went 14 rounds. You know, it's funny I stopped at 14.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, what the significance to that is without knowing it, maybe nothing. Maybe nothing. But maybe that a reminder that until you went 15 rounds, you didn't know. You know, that was the full distance. I mean, you can think of maybe it's made the sport safer by going 12. Maybe. I hope it has. But it's probably taken away some people that would have been champions, that their strength was going those extra rounds, finding a way. And I remember Mike Weaver, terrific puncher, had that body like a Adonis statue. He was just a guy. He went 12 rounds with Holmes. Holmes knocked him out. Larry Holmes was a hell of a heavyweight fighter. You know, he doesn't get his due sometimes. But anyway, he knocked him out, caught him an uppercut. I believe it was in the Garden. I'm not sure. But anyway, Holmes knocks out Weaver. And Weaver was a guy with a bunch of losses on his record, you know. But he was a good puncher. And even though he lost to the best. He learned. It was part of the progression of advancing. And then he gets a chance to fight John Tate, who was an Olympian, I think a bronze medalist. And John Tate was undefeated, heavyweight champ of the world. And it was a real moment of a real-life Rocky moment. A real-life Rocky moment, Ken, where in the 15th round, way behind, Tate is winning big. He can't lose except if something crazy happens. Something crazy was about to happen. And with, I don't know how many seconds left in the 15th round, I think it was the 15th, Weaver hits him a left hook, and Tate's out before he hits the canvas. Face first, like a giant oak tree. Bang. Face first. He falls, and a real live Rocky moment just happened. Only boxing can provide those. You know, like I say sometimes, life's not fair. But if you're tough enough, you're determined enough, you're prepared enough, you've worked hard enough, you've dreamed long enough, on one given night, you can get in that squared circle. You can walk up those steps and get in that ring, and you can make life fair. No matter what's happened in the past, no matter who your parents were, where you came from in the world, what you had, what you didn't have in life, on one given night, you can make everything fair. There's no sport like it. On one given night, you can get in that ring, and you can be called champion of the world. Wow. And on that night, Weaver, with all the losses and everything else that I just described, with seconds left in the 15th round, way behind in the scorecard, he lands a left hook, and he made life fair. He made everything right.
Well, that was excellent. You've given everyone a lot of content to absorb here. We've also given you 42 minutes of the top rounds ever, 14 3-minute rounds, 42 minutes of bonus content for the Corona quarantine. And if that isn't enough and you'll enjoy Teddy's stories, check out his audiobook, Atlas from the Streets to the Ring, A Son's Struggle to Become a Man, available on audible.com. You got anything before we say goodbye, Teddy?
Yeah, I got something for you. I can't give it to you, but I can think about you. And that's the same thing out there now with this going on with the virus and the quarantine. Even if you can't give something to somebody, you can make a phone call. You can tell them you're thinking about them. You can reach out that way. And so I'm doing that. I brought you a Diet Coke because I know that you love Diet Coke.
It's my vice.
So it's here for you.
You're the best.
When we get past these times.
Sounds like a deal. Well, guys, thanks for being with us. I hope everyone enjoyed the show. If you've got suggestions for future content, obviously with no boxing going on, we're here. We'll deliver the content, whatever you guys want. If you have ideas for future shows, please feel free to hit us on all the social channels. And with that, say, Teddy, stay safe. Be careful in Staten Island. And we'll see you guys next time. Take care.
You too, Ken.